Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brianna Mendez. Y'all can call me Bree. I'm one of the co-founders of La Nueva Link, a community to connect Latinx creatives and professionals. For those who want to get to know more about what we're about, be sure to follow us at La Nueva Link or visit lanuevalink.com to join our community. Also, be sure to use our Q&A functionality that's in the bottom to ask these incredible panelists some questions.
Hola everyone, my name is Frances Sola Santiago. I'm the editor-in-chief at Emperifollá. For those of you who don't know us, we're a Latinx-focused style and beauty digital platform launched in 2019. And we want to welcome you to our conversation, Beyond Design, Latinx Entrepreneurship in Fashion. We created this to inspire and help you water your own creativity in the industry. This is in partnership with our faves over at Depop, who we're extremely thankful for the opportunity to connect with our community and to provide a space for Latinx entrepreneurs like Fanny Kahlo, who is one of our panelists tonight. She's joined by David Rivera, co-founder and studio director of fashion brand Christopher John Rogers, Danielle Alvarez, founder of the PR marketing agency, The Bonita Project, Aldo Araujo of marketing and digital strategy at the Council of Fashion Designers of America. And now I'll leave you with our moderator for the night, Ecleen Luzmila Caraballo. She's a features editor at Remezcla. Ecleen, take it away.
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks for the kind welcome, Frances. I'm Ecleen Luzmila. I'm a writer and an editor, and I'm so happy to be here with all these amazing folks in the fashion industry who are leaving their mark in different ways. I'm excited for this conversation and can't wait to hear the questions that you guys have. Can you each go around and say a little bit of something about yourselves real quick? Popcorn style. I know Aldo loves that.
Yes, I can totally kick us off. Buenas tardes a todos. Hello. My name is Aldo Araujo. I'm an Ecuadorian artist and writer living in Brooklyn. Shout out to Bed-Stuy. I, as they already mentioned, work at the Council of Fashion Designers of America. And a fun fact about me, I'm a Pisces and I love Mariah Carey. So I will popcorn this to Danielle Alvarez.
Well, hello, Bonitas and Bonitos. I'm the founder of the Bonita Project, and it's a PR influencer marketing agency based here in New York. I'm Peruvian American. Let's see, I am a publicist. I know that's the most common term to say, and I do work in the beauty fashion space, and I'm very excited to connect with everybody and talk some shit. And I guess I'll pass it along to Fanny.
Thank you. Hola a todos. My name is Estefania, but my social media handles are Fanny Kahlo. I am of Mexican descent. I am the owner of the queer Latinx Depop shop, Ojo por Ojo. And I have been living in San Francisco for the last 11 years, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you guys. Fun fact, I am an Aquarius to the heart, the most complicated and beautiful person of like that sign, as you could say. I'll popcorn on to, let's see, David.
Hey guys. My name is David Rivera. I am one of the co-founders of Christopher John Rogers. Christopher, if you're there, hello. We started that in 2016. It's now been 4 years, which is crazy. It's been a wild ride, but I'm super, super grateful. What can I tell you? I am from South Florida. I'm Puerto Rican. And to kind of tie everything together, I am a huge Mariah Carey fan. I love Peruvian food, and I am also an Aquarius. So, period. Exactly.
The Aquariuses are dominating tonight. I love it. Of course, it's the creative sign, so I'm not really totally surprised. So we're here in this digital space, obviously, because we can't be so in real life because of everything going on. And in general, this has been a season of reimagining in so many ways, from the ways we convene to the ways in which we create. And I'm a little bit curious to know from each of you how this has been a season of reimagining with your practice and your work within the fashion industry specifically. We can start with you, Fanny.
Okay. Yeah, so I did want to point out, like, to your point that we're in a very difficult time right now, but it's also a very empowering time. I think that what this year has been just a very eye-opening, and it's kind of like pulling and taking all of the walls down to what we maybe want to see or have conversations about. And I'm very happy to see them happening more and more. I think that it's opened my eyes to like what I want to continue to do with my community. How do I want to continue to have these conversations happening? How I want to continue to build and be more aware. That's personally like my experience that I've had during like these current times. It's just been a lot of like relearning, deconstructing my own experiences and of others, and listening a lot.
I can go. So I work at the Council of Fashion Designers of America, and I work with designers, not just designers, but students and manufacturers that are local to our nation, and all the other people that fall within the fashion industry's spectrum. But I think, you know, if we're talking about a digital pivot, I think the most exciting and interesting part of it all, right, is how to conduct your business and how to keep it all going. And I can't speak from obviously a designer's perspective, but, you know, being in an organization whose mission is to help strengthen American fashion, I think the way we've pivoted and using the internet, which is such an incredible and such a chaotic place. There's such dark spaces in the internet, but I think the best thing about the internet is the tool to democratize access and give people access that may not have had it before. And I'm talking about from a consumer standpoint, people who love fashion and people who want to be a part of the conversation, as well as designers who always had it, not always, you know, but the challenge when we are living our day-to-day and we were able to be outside, it's how do you capture the attention of an industry? And I'm talking, you know, press and retailers, when you develop your art and present a new collection, how do you get them to pay attention to you? And now that we're in a digital space and everyone's at home, you know, dunking milk and cookies and on their couch, I think the best thing about being digital right now is the discovery element and being able to support designers and appreciate their work as they venture on to storytell in different ways and innovative ways. And I think that has been an awesome byproduct. Fashion will always need a real life experience, in my opinion, but it's been so amazing to see how people pivot and can allow people to breathe and stop the crazy life and really take the time to explore and support the people that they want to. So that's been exciting.
All right, so from an agency perspective, I work with small brands. A lot of them are Latinx owned, and to be very frank, at the very beginning of COVID, I did lose a client. So that was kind of like a wake up call to be like, oh my God, okay, this is gonna get real. Like I live off, you know, monthly fees, like people pay me on retainer, or I'm on retainer for some brands, and shit was about to go down. So I was like freaking out. I do have 2 fashion clients, but at the time, I'll get there in a second. The one fashion client that I still do have is a talent incubator that supports Latin American designers, like high-end Latin American designers from all across Latin America, like from Colombia, Mexico, Honduras, Venezuela, like you name it. Like there's a huge roster of Latin American designers that we work with, and we're known to do an annual pop-up every year in Miami to celebrate these Latin American designers. And that's like the one event we look forward to every single year. And it was happening at the end of April. So no, I kid you not, it was happening at the end of May. So as I think at the beginning of COVID, everybody was like, yeah, this is going to be like a pastime, like a hurricane. Like in 3 weeks, we'll all be back in the office. It'll be all back to normal. When in reality, we did not know what was about to come, like what was about to go down. And, in the next month after March, we had to get realistic and we had to cancel the pop-up. All events were like done. So we had to quickly pivot and turn it to a digital space. And now my client that went from being an incubator and doing events and pop-ups and whatnot, now she's formed an e-commerce site. And I've had to get a lot more creative with pitching, talking to press. And fast forward to June, BLM happened. And I mean, we all know that BLM is nothing new. And I think if anything, a lot of people now with everything that's going on, and everyone's a lot more conscious about like the social matters and whatnot. People are much more supportive now more than ever with small brands and even women of color owned brands. Like I've seen that. I've gotten like as a PR, as a publicist, back then editors would not talk to me like as frequently. They would only hit me up during Hispanic Heritage Month being like, hey, so like let's time to feature your brands. Fast forward to after June, they're like, hey, so you rep some, Black owned brands and Latinx owned brands. And I'd be like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, so we want to cover them. And I'm like, okay, here we go. But you know what? I'm here for it. I'm like, now I'm finally getting the energy and attention that I was asking for 2 years ago when I started my company. So I've seen that. And I think that now more than ever, people are being much more conscious with how they're spending their dollars, much more conscious about the brands that they're supporting. And I'm part of that conversation. I can't be more happy. Money is definitely not lucrative. I'm not making all the dollars right now, but I'm happy that I'm now currently as an agency, I'm aligning my brand with the right type of brands that have the like-minded values as us. Because I think we've all been through that wake-up call. We've seen a lot of people, like everyone's uncomfortable truth has come out. Like I think we can all agree to that. And fast forward to as of a month ago, this hasn't been announced yet, but I do have a new fashion client, and actually Frances here from Emperifollá is the only person that knows because I haven't formally announced her yet. But my new client is Second Wind, which is the brand that blew up like in the middle of the summer with the mask. She launched the mask back in, I think it was early July, because she decided to create a brand and make a fabulous mask. And then she was caught in this whole controversy with Danielle Bernstein copying her mask design, and Diet Prada called her out. Anyways, long story short, she's a new client of mine. She's a new Latinx entrepreneur, like all of you sitting here. And she took advantage of what was happening currently in a lighter note. She's creative. She's always wanted to do something different. And she ended up starting making masks, and now her brand is being supported by people like Ocasio. So, I mean, and I'm happy to call her a client, which I haven't fully announced her yet. Like this is still, so everybody here is the first person to know. You guys got the exclusive. So again, I'm not losing hope. We've all had to pivot. We've all had to use our creative minds the best way that we could. And yeah, like let's not lose hope, guys. 2021 is going to be a lot better. Crossing fingers, and that's it. Yeah.
I guess I can briefly touch on the same topic for you, but I think for us, when we started in 2016, I mean, we were fresh out of college, and the digital landscape is all that we had. I was not really abreast to the world of Instagram the way that Christopher was. Instagram was this huge thing for him in terms of a creative outlet. And what we did was really just carve a space out for ourselves as a brand. And it took us a lot of sleepless nights to create this work that really only lived in a digital space. And then it wasn't and I mean, obviously anywhere near where we are now in terms of a following, but we really were just creating really emotive work that we stood behind and that we really believed in. We knew we were doing stuff that nobody else was doing. And I mean, that's part of Christopher's amazing eye for design and for color. But we really pushed. I mean, one of the very first time I think I met Aldo was with also Joseph at the CFDA, and Christopher had all these like preliminary conversations. He's like, David, you got to come in. And I came in and I was like, listen, we're about to be on the fashion calendar. We have to do a presentation, because everyone at the time was like, don't do a show, just do a lookbook, stay digital, you're small. But for us, as being artists first and foremost, we wanted people to see the work in the round. We wanted people to experience the fullness of what the brand meant in terms of color, fabric choice, gender expression. It's all stuff that's really important to us. So we pushed, and we had a crazy wild first presentation with 98-degree weather outside in September, and turned it out. And then that led to, you know, another presentation, and then our first runway show, and then our latest fashion show that happened in February, which Christina as well turned it out. I mean, it was a fashion show that we were really, really proud of. And we were so happy to have gotten to a point where people could experience all of those things that we felt like we couldn't fully express digitally. However, look where we are now. We kind of had to go back to what we were doing in the beginning, which is finding ways to really emote the core values of the brand, both aesthetically and ethically speaking, through image. And thankfully for us, we're young and we're a small team where we can adapt very quickly. I think we are, at the core, we're a team of 4, and we are traditionalists to a sense in the world of fashion and how we see things. We are a product of the 90s. So, you know, we think fashion, we think runway show, we think, you know, we think kind of traditionally like that. But that being said, we still really appreciate the flexibility that's available in a digital landscape, and how we know what we're doing when we're, you know, on Instagram or when we're on the internet. We know how to kind of curate that voice, and we are really, really excited for what's going to come out for spring, summer 21. We're going back to the roots of a more digital form of presenting the collection. But luckily for us, our clothes are very emotive, and our clothes are fashion, and our clothes are fun, and our clothes do spark joy, in the words of Marie Kondo. So we're really excited. We're grateful that even in a time like this, we know that we can still turn it out because we have each other, and we are young. And I think that's a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? A huge, I don't know.
Advantage.
There you go. It's a huge advantage in terms of adaptability. And that's not to say that things haven't been difficult. I mean, especially since, I would say, June, with the resurgence or the growth of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's been about how do we navigate this new world as a Black-owned brand and train people to not see this as just a Black-owned brand. It's so much more than that. I mean, the Black experience is so varied. And it's been, I think that may be one of the more complicated parts of it now, is navigating the world now, because I mean, we're getting all the press in the world, you know, because it is a Black-owned brand, and Christopher is so talented and is so amazing, but he's not just the Black man, you know, he's so much more than that. And this is not necessarily a brand that's made by a Black person for only one type of Black person. You know, it's a person who happens to be Black and has a very specific experience, and it's for a lot of different type of specific people. And again, luckily for us, we know how to navigate the digital landscape, but in this world now, we're trying to carve a space for ourselves where we are not pigeonholed by people who found out that race just exists, you know, or, you know, that trying to train people to see luxury in a new way, to see a Black-owned business in a new way, to see clothing, you know, in a new way.
That's beautiful, and very much a thing. I think, you know, I was going to touch on that later, but I feel like there's been a huge shift, obviously, in the way that brands are presenting their clothing. And there's this appeal, our desire to appeal to Black and Brown communities right now. And not everyone is kind of going about it the right way. And so one question that I had for you, Danielle, is, you know, what you think about how, or what tips you would give on how to navigate this moment as a brand for people who typically, that's not their bread and butter, and they don't always naturally attract that consumer and are looking how to navigate that space.
As in for non-POC brands, like non-POC owned brands, how they should navigate targeting.
Right, and then even, you know, like white Latin brands sometimes, you know, that appeals, like don't have a very diverse casting system already.
Well, I think, and then what I've been noticing is that, I mean, a lot of brands are definitely jumping in on the movement in comparison to what we saw back in this isn't anything new, right? Like we heard about Black Lives Matter back in like 2015, was it 2014? Like this has been a repeated topic and people have always turned away. And now more than ever, am I seeing a lot more bigger brands, corporate brands, like speaking up about it, you know, actually paying attention. And it's because like I was just reading an article the other day that a lot of they want to appeal to the Gen Zers. Like, and the Gen Zers, like not for nothing, I'm not Gen Z, I'm unfortunately a millennial, but a lot of the Gen Zers, they're much more woke. They're much more educated on this topic. They want to speak up about it. They just are much more socially educated on all things Black Lives Matter. So I think for a brand, like if you want to appeal to that audience, like I have to give it to the Gen Zers because I'm always talking about them. I think that they're the most woke audience that there is. They do pay attention and will like purchase and support brands that actually have the same values as them. And I think brands are now like paying attention to that because they're the next generation to come after millennials. That's it. Millennials, we have mixed feelings on everything. We're not the easiest people. Like I want to believe like I'm somewhat Gen Z, but I mean, even friends, like, you know, I'm just talking about within my circle of people that I even grew up with, like they think a lot differently, especially coming from South Florida. And David, you mentioned you're from South Florida. I'm from South Florida. I'm not gonna even get into that, but you know, like I think brands that are, you know, that want to appeal to us and Black and brown communities, they have to be more aware. They have to educate themselves. I think, you know, starting in June, everybody said that they're listening and learning. I hope you're still doing that, like once a month. And, you know, even as of yesterday, I had a former white colleague even email me asking me, Danielle, can you just send me some resources? Like, I really want to get educated on Hispanic Heritage Month. And I was like, look at her. I was like, okay. So like, you know, I think it takes a lot for people to take that initiative, right? Like some people are very still uncomfortable to speak out and say things, but I think, you know, for those that have these white friends and that are in the industry, and if you are working for a big brand, if you are working in corporate and still feel uncomfortable, don't do it. Like I was that person. I was that person that had to challenge my white peers to be like, hey, listen, why don't we consider this idea? Why don't we do this? And like sometimes like they might not listen, they might not give us the same budget, etc. But you just never know. I think back when I was working in my corporate job, like things were a lot different. People were definitely not trying to listen, but now apparently everyone's listening. So now is the time to use that voice and be like, sorry, I don't agree with that idea. They have to know. And I've always said this since the beginning of launching the Bonita project, like people, like corporate brands and big companies, they have to diversify their team. They have to, because I was part of a multicultural team of 2 people that always spoke about all multicultural things. And it's like, okay, I can't just be doing the job, me and another person. Like this needs to be a collaborative effort amongst everybody. Everyone needs to do the reading. Everybody needs to, like, you know, just be on the lookout for those things. I mean, yes, I've been educating people my whole life. And yeah, they all need to do the work. And yes, challenge your white peers. Do it. You have to do it. I mean, that's the only way these brands are going to learn.
Yeah, and I think that goes, you know, that goes across every industry, I'm sure, across like every part of the industry that we're in specifically, and just beyond that as well. There's always a learning moment, but also it's on the flip side of that, it's like the weight shouldn't entirely be on us. So it's like a tricky balance, but I'm confident you guys are all navigating that well, and I hope you're taking care of yourselves too within that process. So to kick us off, I also like to step into the next like individual questions. I just want to ask a simple yes, no. You know, there's always been discussion, and this is nothing new, you know, that Latins aren't well represented within the fashion industry. Today, 2020, would you say that is true within your corner of the industry? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you would say it's true that
it's true. You're saying it's true.
That there is not a lot of representation in my corner of the industry.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All yeses across the board, but it's not for good reason this time. But obviously you're all here because you're doing the work to change that in your industry, just by being yourselves really within that space. Aldo specifically, you work for the CFDA. which, as we know, wears many hats. You wear many hats within that space, but the CFDA, which is the Council of Fashion Designers of America, you know, you guys handle everything from, it's very forward-facing in terms of the American fashion industry at an international level. So in terms of things like New York Fashion Week and you know, working with emerging designers, and it's a lot of important work that is being done by a small nonprofit. And I'm sure you wear many hats, which you'll talk to us a little bit about. But I want to know specifically, like, how you feel that the council has expanded or embraced the Latin community specifically as American fashion, and a little bit about like your role in that so far. It's you know.
Loaded. One of the first things I discovered about Latinx people in fashion is that there aren't many of us. I always knew the household names from my mom, and, you know, being a little gay Latino boy with dreams of making it into the big city, you know, reading Vanidades or Hola, you know, there was always, you know, that the issues that are in the bathroom, you know, there was, you know, Carolina Herrera, there was Narciso Rodriguez, there was Oscar de la Renta, Isabel Toledo, but why did I only need one hand to count all the ones I knew? So when I got hired, unbeknownst to me at the time, my mission was to bring us in. Like, I knew what I was doing, but the bigger impact of it wasn't really sinking in until I look at things in retrospect. You know, I think there's a lot of times where designers, especially like non-Latinos and specifically white ones, they go to other places for inspiration, right? Inspiration. It's almost like very neo-colonial, the way like white designers will look to Africa or will get artisans in Mexico, or they'll go to Peru to, you know, pull like fabric from the llamas and the alpacas, and they'll work with local artisans, but they'll charge like so much money for this and sell it at a high luxury price point. And these local artisans never get to see any of it. You know, I grew up looking like, oh, look, huaraches, like, oh, I know those, you know, but why is fulanito and fulanita selling it for $800? Like, that didn't make sense to me, right? Like, or, oh, look, a guayabera, why is it like walking down the Dior runway for like $800? Or, you know, et cetera, whatever that was. So my responsibility, the way I saw it, as one of the few Latinos at my job, is to think about us, you know, to bring us in. And to extend that opening to designers that need it and deserve it. I've been so fortunate to be a part of a team, especially like my colleague and my big brother, Joseph Maglieri, who I think is in here. Shout out to Joseph. It's been a group effort. And I think I've really relied on him, and we've worked so closely together as people with this knowledge that we need to, it's somewhat of the motto I grew up with. If something is free, take one and grab one for your hermanito. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I grew up with. It's like, you have a resource, take it and give it to someone else. And so, you know, working with, whether it have been New York Fashion Week on the official calendar, emerging designer discovery was such a big part of it. And I could talk about this for hours, so I'm going to try to condense it. But, you know, ultimately, this country, America, and as it relates to fashion, the government doesn't care about American fashion. We don't get funding from government. We don't have royalties. So a lot of times, you know, fashion is Eurocentric, and we look to Paris and London and Milan, and we're like, you know, they've got so much and blah, 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 but they colonize the world. So they have endowments, they have royalties, they have islands of Haiti still paying them money. You know, it's like, of course, Dior is as big as it is, but when we look at American designers here, they're made up of small businesses, right? These are small LLCs. These are people that that make up our country. Small businesses run America. And so, you know, it's working with that knowledge that the systems are built in an unequal way. And some small businesses as we know, like even with the loans that people had been applying to during the global pandemic, who's getting those and who actually deserves them, right? And it's like being in this position where I could work with designers and impact people even just in a small way, whether it was, you know, David talking about him coming and meeting with me and Joseph about the importance of their brand to show on the official schedule, and allowing people, like, whether it be, you know, if we're talking about Latinx people, like whether it's Sanchez Kane or Willie Chavarria or Luar or Carlos Campos, like that, it was about, we are getting corporate sponsors to pay for things, to build out spaces. We can give things to people for free. Who am I going to give this to? And how will I operate? And how will I make a difference for someone that looks like me, for people in my community, about, you know, just doing that. And, you know, that's, you know, part of all the designers that come in, whether it be a program or an initiative. And then, you know, I write from my experience. I love writing, and CFDA is a platform. It's a resource. We're a nonprofit, but we're a resource. And I developed a series called Latinx and Proud for Latin Heritage Month because of this, like, where are the Latinos? Where are we? Like, what are we doing? Everybody grabs inspiration from us, but I don't see us at the level that I see other people. So that's when I was like, you know, I want to write about people I love, and people maybe not at the level of Narciso Rodriguez, who is my like gay godfather. I love him. Narciso, I love you. Talking about Maria Cornejo or Raul Solis at LRS, or JC Obando, who's such an incredible designer, or Esteban Cortázar, who shows in Paris, or even just supermodels of the time, like D-Lone, Dominican supermodel. And we've seen, you know, a rise of a lot of Dominican models and diversity on the runways, but I think that's where I've been able to use the power and leverage of being a part of this organization that ultimately is a nonprofit, but we're trying to be change makers. And every day, all I can do is try and change the world one small thing at a time.
Yeah, and you're doing that. And I think it's been amazing to see that and to hear about all the work that you're doing. They're lucky to have you, and, you know, and we're grateful that you're in that space because you've been able to open doors, you know, for our community. And I'm glad that David's here too, because he can speak a little bit on that. And I'm glad that, you know, I think obviously this panel is called Beyond Design, but design is such a forward-facing part of fashion. And it's a part that we love to judge and to celebrate. In your case, celebrate, luckily. And, you know, there's so much to celebrate already for Christopher John Rogers, from everything, including this week of the amazing dress that you guys made for Zendaya, or that Zendaya sported and that you guys created. But, you know, it's easy to look at it now and to be so amazed and to be so happy about all the success that you guys have had already in a forward-facing way. But can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you guys face and how you've overcome them prior to the Tessa Thompsons and the Lady Gagas and the Zendayas? I'm sure it was a lot of work to get to this moment.
In terms of the amount of work that it's taken to get to, you know, the moments that you've spoken of, certainly. I mean, I think there's a lot of work involved. There's a little bit of delusion in there. You have to you know, convince yourself that what you're doing is, you know, worth your energy, worth your time. I can say that I am extremely, extremely grateful for the kind of reception that we have had by maybe not so much the public in the beginning, because we weren't so popular, but the fashion world was very, very excited to receive us. And more specifically within there, was the Black community, and is the Black community within fashion, which is very small, nowhere near as small as the Latino population within the fashion industry in that way. But we, like, getting into it, you know, we really felt like there was this community of people that were really rooting for us within the industry. That being said, there was a lot of work to kind of convince everyone, but also I would say maybe even more so to convince ourselves that it was worth our time. For a really long time, we were all working full-time jobs. And we would come back home at night and, you know, make all of the clothing in the living room, you know, including the living room that I'm in right now. And that takes a huge toll on you. You know, I had a conversation with my parents, I would say around June, you know, at kind of peak, you know, Black Lives Matter movement. And it got really emotional. I was just talking to my parents about how I do not, sorry to get so philosophical, but like, I really cannot blame those people that our own people criticize for, you know, living in Section 8 housing, but like having a Mercedes, or, you know, living in public housing, but then having the latest iPhone and having the latest watch and having the latest, you know, this or that, which a lot of people criticize. But I'm like, Mom, Dad, how many people, when you came to mainland, who did you see that was Latino, that was, you know, a CEO, or that was even smaller than that, think smaller, that was a store manager, or that, you know, was ran the company, or whatever, you know, whatever scale that is? They didn't see that. And they answered to me, no, we didn't see anybody. So a lot of people, especially white people, no matter what their socioeconomic status, they see a version of themselves at the top. They see it in film, they see it in television, they see it all around them. And as Latinx people, you have to create this fantasy. And for most people of color, you have to create this fantasy in your head that, you know what, actually, I don't see any fashion designers that look like me. I don't see any CEOs that look like me. I don't see any presidents that look like me. But I am going to do everything that I need to do to try and get as close as I can to that. You know, Christopher loves to say that we, you know, shoot for the moon and kind of land somewhere in the stars, or maybe it's the other way around. But, you know, I had to have that talk with them, because it takes so much energy to convince yourself that it's worth it. And that is a lot of what we do. It's spending a lot of our energy, you know, spending all the, you know, the kind of whatever level you are at, you know, not wasting it, but using it up every single day to convince yourself that what you're doing is worth the time, and is worth the tears, and is worth, you know, sewing through your finger and like all of this stuff. So I think the work is certainly there, but it's on us, you know, because at the end of the day, I can't wait for somebody to accept me. I can't wait for somebody to value my work. I have to accept myself, and I have to value my work first. And that's where a lot of the work comes in.
That's beautiful.
Sorry.
No, super inspiring. I feel like, you know, that'll be motivating to anyone in any space that they're occupying.
I just wanted to jump in real quick to congratulate David and Christopher John Rogers, the whole team, because they had just got awarded the CFDA Fashion Award for Emerging Designer of the Year. So everyone just
amazing. Claps.
Thank you. A lot of people make up the team that's gotten us to where we are. So we're super grateful. We do everything here in New York City. We're very grateful to the Garment District and what's left of it for putting up with us and our crazy shenanigans. We're super grateful to the CFDA, you know, to everyone who's helped us out along the way. We're a small team, but there's a lot of us that make it happen.
Amazing. And then speaking of small teams, Fanny, you're a team of one, yes?
Yes, I am a team of one.
So that's a really small team, and you know, but it's you know all about that hard work, and
yes.
Also, you know, you have to be passionate about it. So you know, tell us a little bit about your experience with your small business, and you know, how spaces like Depop and other digital communities have helped you to, you know, to establish yourself and to do what you love to do.
Yeah, to go off of what David said, I think that the biggest struggle when I started 3 years ago was just believing in myself, because I was raised in my Mexican household, which was very much about like, you're going to go to school to get a job that's going to basically provide you an income, but not so much about like what you're passionate about. There was never these conversations in my household of, hey, like, what are you interested in? Like, can we like sign you up for these types of classes? It was very much like, no, like, eso no se hace, or, you know, things like that. So it was very much like me wanting to open up my own even Depop shop. I was like, I don't feel like I'm ready. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Like, I don't have the tools, you know. There was a lot of doubt, but I ended up doing it just because I was always and have been very passionate about like clothing and styling myself, styling others. People would always comment on it. So going on Depop was just a way of seeing where it would go, getting rid of some clothing, and then creating a platform for essentially queer Latinx people to see themselves through it, to see themselves like wearing some clothing and seeing how I would style it, and then having them be like, oh, like, I actually like that. Like, I could see myself wearing that, which to me, like, growing up, I remember, you know, looking through magazines and like looking through just like looking at TV, seeing Rebelde, seeing like all of these novelas and being like, oh my God, I love the way they dress. Like, I'm never going to be a part of that world, you know, like, I don't have any knowledge in that. And I had to create it for myself. You know, I had to create these spaces for myself. And like digital spaces like Depop have allowed me to do that because they hold such a community base to them. Like, there's other platforms where you could sell clothing, I'm sure, as we all know. But to me, Depop provides this community space that I don't see in other platforms. They're always like promoting you, they're sending you tips, they're encouraging you basically to be, you know, a top seller, as they say. So the journey is just starting. Like, the journey is 3 years old, but it's only the beginning. So it's been a really beautiful ride so far.
That's so great. And do you find yourself connecting with other Latinos within that space, with Depop specifically?
Not so much, but I do see one of the things that just happened this past week actually was somebody tagged my shop and tagged their friend and was like, por fin, like, mira, and the other person was like, oh, I love to see like a brown owned shop, and like, thank you for sending this to me. And I was like, oh my God, like, that made my heart, like, you know, like, to see like somebody tagging my shop to like promote like that itself, that they're seeing themselves through me, was really beautiful. Like, of course I have friends that sell, and you know, like, we try to like talk about like our experiences, like, shout out to Erica, but you know, like, I have friends that I work with and we talk about our experiences, but we don't know a lot of people in general that we could conversate with. So it's been really good to have this space right now, and hopefully other people will reach out to us and we can continue to create this community of Latinx sellers online, because a lot of the vintage selling is predominantly white from what I've seen. And a lot of that has to be because they have like their parents that pay for their rent, their parents that provide this income. And so they're just like, here I am at Goodwill, like spending all this money, like, and I don't have that ability to do that. So it's like, oh, that must be nice to just get to like have a spare room in your parents' house and build your own like shop. But for me, it's like I pay my own rent in San Francisco. I pay for everything. I do it all alone. I, you know, market myself. I ship. I do everything. So it's like a learning experience as I'm doing it. But to see my growth has been just, like David said, it's just like so powerful. We have so much passion in us. Like Aldo and Danielle have also spoken about it, and it's just beautiful that we are so passionate that we believe in ourselves beyond anyone else believing in us, you know?
Yeah, and honestly, it's so much more rewarding this way. It's so much more rewarding that way, and that you can say, I did this myself. Like, not in the Kylie Jenner self-made kind of way, but in the like actually self-made kind of way. So that's,
Exactly.
you know, all props to you for that, and we're really proud. So okay, just a reminder to leave questions in the Q&A, and then I'll ask one more question to everyone. So obviously you guys have created a space for yourselves, whether that's within a company or creating your own company or agency, whatever that may be. You know, what are some ways in which you guys think that we can continue to build our equity as Latinx within the fashion industry?
I can go again. I think it's just about bringing our own people on board. Like, to go off of what Danielle mentioned earlier, that she now has a new client, like that is so beautiful that this person wants to work with Danielle, like, you know, as a new client. And so, like, to me, in a smaller sense of a smaller shop, like I always reach out to my own people, like, hey, do you want to be the photographer? Do you want to help me style this shoot? Do you want to vend at this pop-up that I was asked to vend at? And that's the way that I feel like we're going to continue to build our own, you know, and to continue to build ourselves upwards, to just continue to reach out to one another and provide each other spaces like that.
That's great.
I think for sure. Oh, sorry. Can I go, or are we going to cut to questions? Oh, okay.
No, go ahead, David.
No, I agree. I think it's about, I mean, Aldo, you put it really nicely. You know, if they say something's free, grab one for yourself, someone for your brother. And I think it's a lot of that. It's about bringing people from the community on board into the spaces that you've worked to get into, and to the spaces that people have given you access to. I think it's really important. I mean, I think, Aldo, what you did for Hispanic Heritage Month last year through the CFDA was really great. And what you're going to be doing this year is great. I mean, even La Nueva link has been really important, because I know growing up, I didn't see stuff like that. I didn't see, and Emperifollá, you know, and the Bonita project. This is stuff that I didn't see a lot of when I was growing up, and obviously was before the era, you know, before the world of social media had exploded into what it is now. And I think we have a great opportunity today in age to have physical, you know, exposure of what people, you know, like a manifestation of what people believe in. And I think it's really important to bring people on set. I mean, we had, I guess, how do I say this without spilling any beans? But we just shot our lookbook for this new collection, and it was a really, really special moment for me to have. And it sounds so silly, like this should sound silly to anyone, but it was so crazy for me, and I felt so happy to have, you know, Latino photographer, 2 Latino photographers shoot for us. And, you know, and one of them had a full, you know, Latinx team of all different colors. And that made me so happy. And I remember our very first runway show last spring, I was in tears during the casting, because I was not expecting our very first runway show to feature so many Latinas down the runway. And I got really emotional, and they came in all different shapes and colors and sizes. And I remember putting them in the clothes for fittings, and I would hear their accent, and I would speak in Spanish to them, and they would freak out, because they were not expecting for, you know, me being one of the designers and being also, you know, the stylist for the season, and, you know, working on the brand, for someone like me to be Latino. And like all the girls were geeking out. They're like, oh my gosh, where are you from? Colombia, oh, Mexicana, you know, Ecuatoriana. And everyone's going crazy, because it feels so unheard of. And I am so grateful that I had those moments that I'm happy, but it makes me uncomfortable that I am surprised, or I am so grateful that I get to work with a Latin photographer, or I get to work with Latin models on the show. Like, girl, that's crazy. Because what white person has ever thought that? Like, oh my God, I'm so happy to have a white photographer. Like, it's like what? I'm like, oh my God, a white model, gag. Like, literally no one has ever said that. So I think it's about bringing people into the fold and showing people that, you know, it's possible and that it is a reality, but you really have to do the work. You have to convince yourself that it's worth it, and that you are so happy to be in the space that you're at, that you think it's worth it to bring somebody else with you. So I agree with you all. I mean, I think it's really special. And that's what we need to do to encourage that kind of equity in our community.
That's beautiful.
White people can read a book.
What?
Oh, I said, and some white people can read some books.
Yes, multiple.
Yeah. In the words of Danielle.
And get it from a POC owned shop, not Amazon.
Exactly.
Danielle, do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take it a little personal, because when I first started in this industry, there was no such thing as like a Latina owned agency. There was not, I like I said, I was raised in South Florida, and at the time, I'm talking about 2010, 2011. The summer of 2010, I ended up interning at my first PR agency gig here in New York. I came to New York for the summer, and my boss was white. It was like a small boutique firm run by two white girls. I was, they hired me, whatever. And then the following summer, or the following year in 2011, I ended up landing my first job at this reputable PR agency that was actually featured on MTV. Who remembers the show The City? I don't know if you guys, maybe you guys may be too young for this, but that was right when I graduated.
I didn't have cable, but I know it.
Okay. So yeah, this was like during the Hills, like those time, like that era. So yes, Francis, The City was iconic. So I idolize these white girls. Like when I tell you I walked into that office, it was like I was walking into a Devil Wears Prada scene, and I interviewed with the white boss, and I wanted to be them. Like I definitely have PTSD after that job, because I came out, like the thing is, like I wasn't bullied, but I definitely felt I was tokenized 100%. And I felt like I just never fit in. I didn't, because one, I'm not, I don't come from money. I don't summer at the Hamptons. I wasn't like, as an entry level publicist at 30K salary in 2011, I was rocking what I could from Forever 21, Steve Madden. She's like, mind you, the girls around me at the same level as me were rocking Christian Louboutins, Gucci bags, Givenchy bags. And I'm like, wow, what is this? Like, I felt like, yes, I got the cool girl job, but at the same time, I didn't like acclimate as quickly. And I even once was told that I was dressed too Miami, that I needed to tone it down, because remember the bandage skirts? Yeah, I was all over that. And I felt some type of way. I was like, oh my God, like I feel attacked. I just clearly don't fit in here. And I had a mental breakdown. Like after a year, I was like, yeah, I have to look for another job. But for some reason, God kept me there. And he said, no, you're going to stick here for another 8 years, and you're going to make it through. And now fast forward to 2020, I look at myself and like, who was I? Like, I think at the time when you're young and you're still in college, you're still trying to develop what personality traits you're going to carry, what values you carry. Like at the time, like my priorities, what I'm saying is my priorities back then were a lot different than what they are now. Okay. And I think as a 31-year-old, I can say like, I definitely don't want to be a part of that clique anymore. Yes, I learned a lot. I'm not going to discredit these white girls. They were very disciplined. They treated me like shit at times, but I learned, I managed. I managed to, learn the ropes. And now I can confidently say that, yeah, like now in this new age that we're like supporting Black and brown businesses, I want to create generational wealth within my own team. Like I want to make sure that I am hiring people like me. Like I even have a Black intern that just recently started in the fall, and she's Nigerian. Like I'm trying to keep it within our circle, but also expand it to like, and bring opportunities to other people. I think it's very important. I think as a Latinx owned, or as a Latinx entrepreneur, I think it's important for us to give these opportunities to other younger people that are coming from our same circle. I think, again, I'm just trying to say, like at the time when I was a lot younger, I wanted to be part of this white girl clique that in the end, yeah, again, I learned, but they never had my back like that. Those girls are quick to throw you under the bus so they can get the spotlight and they can get to the top. And I was just not about that. Like, and I can't stress this enough. Like in this industry, please stay humble. It's so important to stay humble. And I think I've always been humble since day one. That's why I have the contacts that I do. I get the support that I have. I don't think I've ever been a bitch to anyone. Fashion is very bitchy. It's very catty. The white girls made it that catty. Do you guys remember that other fashion publicist that was a big time deal back then, Kelly Catrone?
Oh.
So Kelly, I read her book. I was obsessed with Kelly. I wanted to be Kelly. I wanted to work at, what was it? I even forgot her agency name.
People's Revolution.
Yes, I wanted to work there. I idolized this woman. Then now I look back and I was like, what was I thinking? Why would I idolize someone that was such a bitch to her own employees? Like I'm telling you, so much has changed. And I have to, again, going back to my Gen Zers, you guys would be quick to cancel her and call her out. If this was like, if she was like, you know, this day and age, people would be like, no, this woman is crazy. And I'll never forget one year in Fashion Week, I was like backstage and it was like, you know, the designer was already done and she was already coming in next. And she was like, why is everybody effing here? Like, everybody get the fuck out. And I was like, wow, like who speaks like that to the team? Like, I'll never forget that first impression that I had of her in person. That was like, okay, this is definitely someone that I do not want to be. But again, a lot of growth has happened over the past 10 years since I started my career. And again, like, I just want to continue to just create space and work with people and you know, just people with the same background as me. I think it's just like 100%, like that's where I'm coming from. And that's it. My talk is done.
No, thanks for sharing a little bit about your story, which I'm sure many people can relate to, in predominantly white spaces in our corners of the industry. So let's move it on to some Q&A. Whoever wants to hop in can. We have one broad question on the conversation right now in culture around non-POC allies and allyship. So what does allyship mean to you and how has it impacted your life and career as well as business? Aldo, you want to start?
Yes. I think it also ties back to, if I were to answer the last question about equity, first, really quickly, I think equity, we need to own property. That's first of all, like we do not own enough property as just non-white people. And then allyship, I think the other way to build equity is for non-Black people to prioritize and lead and champion the movement for Black freedom. Mm. Because once we get freedom for Black people, we will have freedom. And I think that and reframing everything mentally to that mission has completely changed my life. And I'm not going to pretend like I've always had this knowledge, and I'm not going to pretend like I've always been this person, but knowing that just and being radicalized in that thought process has changed everything for me. You know, it's changed, everything gets deconstructed and I see things differently. And I think ultimately everything that I do, just having that knowledge is informed by it. And I think, I don't know, it's a loaded question. And I'm like losing my train of thought right now as I'm thinking of all the things in my head. I'm a Pisces. Again, it's all in here. It's hard for me to.
No, but that's fair. And I think, you know, like thanks for being transparent about your experience too, and admitting that hasn't always been, you know, this point in your journey you haven't always been there. And I think that's important to acknowledge too, for people who feel like they can't start now, like it's not too late to learn how to be a good ally and to reprioritize. So yeah, thanks for that. I think, you know, there's a lot of learning and unlearning to do, and yeah, we're all going to do our part, I'm sure. And it's a great question, especially right now. I think it's impossible, as we've seen throughout the conversation, to have a discussion on anything, particularly an industry like this one, where, as we've talked about a little bit, a lot of the ideas do come from Black and Brown or other POC communities. So it's important to acknowledge that in our part in being a part of the Black Lives Matter movement and doing our part. So on a lighter note, let's go back to Fanny, and I want to talk about actually also first, thank you to Joseph for that last question, Maglieri. And this one doesn't have a name, but it's for Fanny. Where do you see your shop going, and do you think you'll ever want to design your own clothes? What do you see for the future of clothing when more people divert from the norms of gender and expression? There are multiple questions in there. They're all really good. So yeah.
Where do I see my shop going? I think that the shop is going to continue to be something that I'm going to push for it to be more of a space where we have conversations and where collaborations will happen. A space where if I continue to grow, I can also provide that and shine light on other artists so that they are also recognized. So going back to how we build our equity would be just to continue to help others continue to build themselves as well. Designing my own clothing, I don't see that in my future because I am not a very sewing tech person. Maybe David could take on my ideas and create something for me or someone else. I have a lot of ideas. I like to sketch a lot and write a lot, but it would be cool to one day see that on a piece, but personally I probably wouldn't be able to do that myself. And when it comes to the clothing diverting from norms of gender and expression, I think that's really interesting because although I do promote myself as a non-gendered and a queer shop, I'm sure that people may feel otherwise when they see a woman wearing woman clothing or a man wearing man clothing. But I hope that we get there, and I hope that when we do get there, it'll be more normalized to have anyone wear anything. I don't think fashion and clothing will ever go anywhere. I don't think that that's something that's ever going to be taken away from us. I want to continue to provide clothing to have people express themselves through it. I love that idea. I want to work to have the clothing be more gender neutral. I want to have the clothing be something that somebody could just put on without having it be like, this is specifically for a female, male, non-binary person. But yeah, there's a lot of in that question, but I hope I kind of answered that. I definitely don't see it going away. I see it more of bringing power to people no matter how you identify.
That's great. Okay, well, we have learned so much today, and it's been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad it was just as rich as I thought it would be, and I'm so glad that we were able to chat and hopefully inspire some of the listeners. On that note, I'm actually going to read a note from an anonymous attendee. It's not a question, but to close this off, it says, I always struggle with managing upwards in terms of practicing diversity within an editorial workspace, and oh, there is a bit of a question there, but I'll read the last part. It says, this happens especially when attempting to explain that these efforts start from hiring within. Thank you for your time, for so many great lessons today. This brought me a lot of joy and hope. So thank you, guys.
I love that. Thank you, whoever wrote that.
Yes, thank you guys so much for being part of this conversation. A big thank you to Depop for helping us make this happen, and for supporting all these incredible panelists today.
Yeah, we're so thankful to La Nueva Link for inviting us to collaborate with you guys and to host this sort of conversations. We're super sad that we can't do all of these in person, but I think it's a really, as you all talked about today, it's a great opportunity to connect digitally and host all of you from the comfort of our bedrooms. So thank you so much for attending tonight, and thank you, Ecleen, and all of the panelists for being here tonight. It was great.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good
We'll have to
night.
do another fashion thing soon.
Bye.
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 Be safe.